And there weren't a lot of agreements. I think we disagree on more or less everything, but we spoke. I listened to him, he listened to me, and once again, I don't think I share his views, and neither does he share my views. But there was dialogue, and if there's one thing that's important, and I'm willing to hear questions and answer them. I'm not here just to lecture. That's not my intention. I think it's important to have dialogue and a willingness to listen. That's something important, and we should do so. We are in the midst of a difficult war. I call it our second war of independence. We're doing everything we can in order to bring back the hostages, 120 hostages. We're doing everything. I'd like to tell you that I meet with the families of hostages all the time. I hear their pain, I listen to it, and I'd like to say that this is a challenge shared by this entire nation. We must beat Hamas. We must triumph over them. I'm saying this in the clearest fashion. It's their fault. They're the ones who massacred us on October 7th, and the responsibility for this terrible thing. Look, let him speak. He's a guest of this conference. He's a guest of this university. So please, excuse me, but with all the yelling, we can't even hear what you're saying. Please let the Minister of Education speak. And there can be a dialogue later, but you cannot constantly heckle. We can't even hear what you're saying when you're constantly yelling. We just hear these voices. We don't hear words. So please try and remain quiet. We're facing a tremendous challenge in the north as well. I'll go over the implications for the education in the north, and I'll also talk about the south. But I think that today, as I look at everything that has happened since October 7th, the main gap in education is mainly in the north, and I'll talk about that later. So I'll give you a brief presentation because I understand that's what people wanted me to talk about, and I'll address all the topics. I heard it's difficult to hear what people are saying, but I heard that people want me to talk about the law, the draft law, so I'll talk about that as well. I don't know, it says to press next. I'm pressing next. It doesn't move, nothing, but okay, I'll do without. Look. So, in the south, and I'm going to start with the south, we're doing something, a very complex process that, we started the worst possible place at the lowest point. How do we get up? How do we resurrect after that terrible thing that happened? So the Tkuma administration was established, and I'll soon talk about education. So what do people need? First of all, security. It's clear to everyone that there will be no resurrection without, there will be no education without resurrection. And I think that the main point that allows ultimately for people to return and for us to be stronger, I can tell you a story about the senior class of the Nofei Bsor school. It's the high school of the Eshkol Regional Council. And they had a teacher who was abducted, and thank God she's been returned, and one of the students from that class was murdered, and they were divided up by dozens of hotels. And the students came to me and they said, we want to be together. Please let us complete our last year before the army to be together. We need that for our resilience. And it happened just before Hanukkah. We did everything we could, and we established this youth village or boarding school, a new one in En Gedi, and we brought all the seniors from the entire region, almost 120 students who came and slept there and would go to their families only at the weekends. they've just finished the school year, and they even had a graduation ceremony where they mentioned their friend who has been murdered and the hostages and everything. And I heard this both from their teachers and from them. It was their own initiative, by the way. It was the students' initiative, and we allowed that, and we enabled that to happen, and that really made a change. And now they're on a path that they can deal with the future. Another issue is housing. There are certain places we still haven't found a response for their housing. The Kibbutz Be'eri, until now they were at the David Hotel at the Dead Sea, but now they're about to move to Kibbutz Chatzerim. They'll start the next school year in Chatzerim, in Kibbutz Chatzerim, in the local system of that regional council, and the reconstruction and rehabilitation process of Be'eri is still going on. Now, as for employment, that's the way to rebuild and resurrect. Throughout this time, this is such tremendous uncertainty. When are they coming back? How are they coming back? What's happening? The security threat, who wants to come back, who doesn't? So in order to provide some answers to these question marks, we've also established some additional schools. There was some criticism initially. They said that they have to go back to their regular schools, and in Sha'ar HaNekev, the campus is adjacent to Sderot, 2 kilometers from the border. Just think how much trust in the systems of those communities that have been evacuated and are now coming back and now need to send their children to this campus. So there was a decision to build additional schools more farther from the border. It made it very complicated, but we said as long as there is no security, we cannot send these students back to a place where their parents won't feel safe about. Today, I can say that the Sha'ar HaNegev campus in Sderot, 90% of all the people returned. I'm not talking about kibbutzim like Be'eri. We have a separate plan for them, and they are going to go back. But so we see stabilizations where things have been settled, but we still have some gaps in Shkol Regional Council, which is the most southern regional council, and it's because of the IDF activities in the southern area of the Gaza Strip, Rafah. It's more difficult to feel security there. Another great difficulty or challenge was the reservist students and university students will take care of that through a separate unit, but the students, and I assume that here at Reichman as well, I had some conversations with this university as well, with so many students, how to make sure that they won't be harmed by the war, their studies. And then together with the Higher Education Commission and the presidents of all the universities, and through legislation, we led and we managed to found maximal support. What do I mean by that? Because we need to ultimately understand, if somebody served throughout this period and lost 2 semesters, there is a price that person has to pay personally following this fierce war, and we owe it to them to help them, and to help them financially wherever we can help, pedagogically, to maybe give them credit points and reach out to them. We're doing so, and to the credit of this institution here at Reichman, I have to say in general, even before the war, this university has always been a warm and welcoming place to all those who serve in the IDF and the security forces, and now especially during the war. There's one thing I'm very proud of, and we managed to pass this as a law. We passed as a law prioritization in admission to higher education institutions to combat soldiers. You could say on the one hand it seems natural, but I'm telling you, in contrast, I mean, there was a fierce resistance by the Ministry of Law and the Judiciary. They said, how come, I mean, because this undermines the principle of equality. How can you prioritize combat soldiers? But we had to explain that equality indeed is a key value, but a young man and woman were willing to risk their lives for the benefit of all Israelis. We believe that this is just as a value that's just as important, and they need to be rewarded for that. In this, we managed to pass this law. The greatest challenge in the educational system, and this is what the entire country experienced after October 7th, that terrible massacre, and that is the need to provide a response for those who have been evacuated from their homes in the north and in the south. It took time to set it up, and I'm saying this everywhere, and I'm saying this here as well, that the civil society in the first week or two provided a response where the ministries didn't function, and I admit, yes, I can tell you, after a week, we had visited all the hotels, we took kindergarten teachers who were brought from different organizations, and now we are employing them. In some of these places, we're still employing them. I'm saying this to the credit of the civil society. It was a tremendous challenge to reach all these places, to set the schools and daycare centers, and I think we managed ultimately to rise to the challenge, and that was something that helped the evacuees in Tiberias. If you visit Poria at the top, near the big shopping complex, there's a large complex for 1,000 students that we built at the Dead Sea Regional Council in Gedi. We also built 2 schools in Eilat, 2 schools in all of that in order to provide some kind of a response to the evacuees. I talked about Nofei Absol boarding school. I'd like to mention 2 additional challenges so that you understand everything that we had to deal with during the war. The children who were abducted by Hamas and who returned from captivity, and we tailored a specific support system for each and every one of them with psychologists, and that was very moving. event that we had to prepare for in a special way. The families of the reservists, it's not just the difficulty of the soldier at the front who needs to fight, but the families, it's difficult for them, the wives, the children. We also took action to strengthen them. There's an inherent difficulty because you don't have a database that you know exactly which father or which mother is doing reserve duty, so we had to check with the schools to see where we could identify these children and give them the support needed. And I'd like to talk about one more thing, which is national resilience, and I think that it's extremely important and central. Excuse me, sir, sit down, please. Sit down, please, sir. Well, since I think, look, excuse me, I'd like to I will talk about the draft law because I see that I only have 5 minutes left. Excuse me, sir. Please sit down or step out. Yes, goodbye. So I'd like to talk about the draft law in view of the ruling of the High Court of Justice, and I only have 5 minutes left. It wasn't part of the presentation I planned, but it's important we talk about it. First of all, I'd like to say in the clearest manner the decision, the ruling of the High Court of Justice reached today. It's 42 pages long. I haven't read all of it, but we will uphold all of it. The government of Israel is definitely will abide by the law. And this is something I'm not just saying here. I said this in the Foreign Affairs and Security Committee the first day it discussed the draft law. I came to the committee and I said, look, the state of Israel is at a junction right now. We have two options, and that's what we intend to do, to draft the ultra-Orthodox in order to respond to the needs of the military period that's going to happen. It can't happen any other way, and it's manifest in the ruling of the Supreme Court. And number two, to do so together, not through a dispute that will tear up the Israeli society in the middle of a difficult war. We can do it together in cooperation. What do I mean? I understand that member of Knesset, Yuli Edelstein, was here before, and perhaps he also talked about it. The military said to the court, I can draft 3,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews this year. It has to happen, and there has to be a surplus to that. But there are various opinions, but what's the argument with the ultra-Orthodox society regarding those who study at yeshivot? Look, we can recruit thousands of young men from the ultra-Orthodox society who are not yeshiva students. This hasn't happened so far. We can do this. We must do this. We need to provide the response to the IDF. We must recruit them. And once we see thousands of young ultra-Orthodox Jews wearing uniform, coming in in to and going out of Beitar Ali, Jerusalem, and Bnei Brak. This can be achieved. We need to pass this law, and I think it is a great opportunity to reach a consensual outline that will not divide up this nation. Look, we can do it in a simple way. You should send call-up warrants to all the ultra-Orthodox young men, and it's enough if one not to come that it will start a civil war between us. Yes, but many will join the army on their own will. I think this is an opportunity. I will insist on significant drafting of the ultra-Orthodox young men for the needs of the IDF, but I'm also not one of those who say all I care about is for this government to collapse and to create this rift inside Israeli society. I can still go over the presentation, but my time is almost up, and I would like, and I do hope, if in a proper dialogue discussion, if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. I'm sorry I cannot hear questions not spoken into a mic. Hopefully they'll be repeated. There are 64,000 yeshiva students who are exempt from drafting. I said that the IDF can draft 3,000. There are 12 to 13,000 ultra-Orthodox young men every year, and from these 3,000 it will grow to 5,000 or 6,000. I think if we reach the goal of 50% of drafting from every ultra-Orthodox class, that would mean success. Another question, and that will be the last one. Well, I can say this very clearly. And let me just say one thing about, I usually don't do that, but since it's no secret, and he probably also said that, I sat with Eyal Waldman at the back, and he said the most important thing for the state of Israel is to go for elections now. Some people think that, and I don't completely reject this view. It's a valid view. I said, on the contrary, to go for elections now in the middle of the war, it means losing the front in Gaza and losing the front in the north. We will continue to disagree on this point. We are now in the middle of a war. We have to win this war. This war. We will win this war only if we're determined, only if we lead together this thing that we're doing to confront our enemies and to give our military what it needs in order to win. I believe that this is what's going to happen. I won't be part of a government who won't let the military win, and we have to be here all together in order to beat Hamas. It's not easy. It's going to take it a while. We have a commitment to the hostages. I hear all kinds of statements, me and all the government ministers. It's a main goal for us to bring back the hostages, and it pains me just as much as it pains anybody else. So with your permission, Amos, I'd like to finish now. I think everything is legitimate. I think people can think differently, but let's maintain a dialogue between us so that we can grow out of it. We're together here, and our enemy is Hamas, and it is in Gaza. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much, everyone.